Hi. I was driving down the road one day with my 12-year-old daughter in the car. She was sitting next to me. We pulled up at the traffic lights, and I noticed that she was staring out one of the windows. She kept doing it, and after a minute she jumped. She seemed to turn around again and was looking at a woman in a red car next to us. I said to her, "What's the matter?" She said, Mum, I've just realised that that woman in the car thinks she's the centre of the world, just like I do." I said, "Well, you're pretty young to have realised that. Did you realise that there's a whole lot of people who get to be really old and they never realise that?" It's weird when you think about it, isn't it? Think about the size of your own private mind, just that big architectural structure we build in the privacy of our mind in which we live. It's the universe of me and the universe of you, and in it are all of our feelings, all of our history, everything that's happened, everything we remember, everything we hope for, and all our dreams, the shifting sands of feeling. It's quite a big architectural structure, and as I say it, I can see yours beginning to show as I look out here at you. So we have that. It's bigger than our physical self. It seems more substantial somehow, I think, from within the privacy of our own mind. But do we really know much about what goes on inside that architecture and how our mind works? Well, philosophers, psychologists and psychiatrists have been thinking about this for a very long time. People never tire of thinking about this question about how does the mind work? Who am I? What makes me happy? What makes my life worth living? Now, it's not a new question, as I said, it's not an original question, and yet for each generation of person who's born, that's you and me right now at this point, we're deeply concerned about that because our lives matter deeply to us. It's personal. What's going on in that architecture that we build, that's our mind, that's our self, is personal, it's private, and we care really deeply about it. Now, the bad news is that the bonds of love, of being a human being, they don't last very long. After about 2.5 generations, you'll be forgotten. I'm sorry. It's terrible news, really. The wheel of life spins hard, and we don't get to be on it for very long. But that even makes it more important how we feel about our lives and ourselves inside this architecture of the mind that we create for ourselves. So who else cares about this? Well, if you think about it, this living a good life and well-being could be seen as a continuum of physical and mental health from -10 to +10. Just start to think about where you might be. If there are 2 sliders running along on that continuum, you've got control of both of the sliders, say. Where do you live on that? Where do you live on that continuum? On the continuum of physical health and mental health. I'm not talking about mental and physical illness, by the way. That's maybe -10 to -4. People do experience that, but that's not what I'm talking about today. I'm talking about the -4 to +10 of everyday life for most people in life in the big population curve. Where do you sit on it? Can you imagine moving those sliders along? Does your mental positioning change hour by hour sometimes? Do you sometimes wake up in the morning and the mental structure above you is so heavy you can barely get your head off the pillow? So just hold that idea about the sliders for a moment. If you want to build your physical health, we know a lot about that. There's good medical systems available to us if we live in a country like Australia, and we know about that we should have exercise and we should eat well. That's fairly well known. So if you choose to build your general mental health from -4 to +10, you can do it. You can do it if you've got the motivation, the will, the time. Sometimes a bit of money helps too, but not only money. But mental health is a different thing. We don't really know so much about how to build mental health. It's not that well understood. You see, most of the research into the mind and brain has been focused on building and repairing mental illness. So for the 1 in 5 people who are mentally ill, sitting in the, say, -10 to -5, there are things that are available that have been developed out of this research. There are medications you can take, there are doctors you can see, psychiatrists you can talk to, there are therapeutic interventions, sometimes like cognitive behavioural therapy, but not only that. That's the mental illness side of things. But what I'm most interested in today is the mental health side of things for all of us. How do you build it? What do we know about it? Who's interested in it? The World Health Organization is interested in it. And about a couple of generations ago, it started talking about public health. And it started saying that public health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. Complete physical, mental and social well-being, not just the absence of illness and infirmity. Sometime after that, in the 1980s, there emerged a sea change really in the publishing industry. It was the self-help boom, the human potential movement, when it turned out that a lot of people started to become quite interested in the inner life, particularly women. This was a movement and a publishing boom, $1 million publishing boom, really led by the purchasers of women who had started to become very interested in that inner life, in that inner architecture. Sometime after that, by about 1998, Dr. Martin Seligman, who'd been focusing all of his research generally on mental illness, started to take a keen interest in building mental health. He was joined by a number of other psychologists and they launched the movement of positive psychology. It was also building on the rational, emotional work that had been done by other scientists in the previous 50 years. Now, one of these people was Dr. Sonia Lyubomirsky. She's done some work on happiness. Yes, I have my happiness pie up there. Her work showed that if you want to live a good life, if you're interested in your happiness, then 50% of people's general happiness is actually established and set by the genetic background. There's really not too much that you can do about that. 10% of it is really influenced by your situation and your circumstances. And in a lot of cases, you can't do too much about your situation and circumstances. Sometimes you can, but often you can't do it at all. But 40% of the ability to build happiness in your own life is in your own control. It's produced by intentional activities that you can do. So the thoughts that are rocketing around in that architecture of self, the feelings that flow from those thoughts and the actions that you decide to take on the basis of that are very important in you and your happiness and well-being across the whole of your life. I was pretty stunned when I came across that. But in fact, most of us, many of us, when we think about that architecture, it does seem to be quite immutable. Most people sort of feel that we're set in a certain way and we can't change. Now, the science of neuroplasticity suggests that that is not true at all. It says really clearly that the brain, it's not a computer, it's not a machine. It's actually a bit more like a Play-Doh map with grooves running in it. And if you tip water into the Play-Doh map, the water will run along those grooves in a very predictable way. But if you start making some new grooves in the Play-Doh map, the water will run into new areas of the Play-Doh map. And it turns out the Play-Doh map and the brain has quite a lot of unused territory. So there are real possibilities about trialling new mental states, learning them, practicing them, and developing new grooves in the Play-Doh map or new pathways in the brain with which you can build a new architecture if that's what you want, if that's going to improve your life. But if you think about my architecture, and I'm thinking about all of yours, is it possible, you think, to build the mental health of everyone? It's one thing for me to address it inside the privacy of my own mind. I've got a reason to want to do that. But what about the whole society? Can you do it for a city? Can you do it for a state? Could you do it for a country? Can you build the mental health at scale? Well, that's exactly what South Australia is doing right now. The Wellbeing and Resilience Centre, and you saw our great building up on the image back there a moment ago, the Wellbeing and Resilience Centre at SAHMRI is taking a population health approach to building mental wellbeing and resilience in this South Australia. We were inspired by the visits of Dr. Martin Seligman some years ago. He came here and he spoke to 14,000 of us South Australians, professionals, public servants, community members, and he said, you know, the science is showing that wellbeing is measurable, teachable and learnable. You put all those things together, then you can absolutely say that you can build mental health at scale, and that's what we're doing here. We're measuring and building wellbeing of South Australians. So how are we doing it? Well, Seligman's and others' research shows that wellbeing is not just one item. If you want to adjust this structure and turn yourself in the direction of a better life, according to how you define a better life, there are a number of capacities that you might need to build or pay attention to. So the Seligman dashboard of wellbeing comprises the following things. It's called PERMA, and it's his proposed measure for wellbeing across the whole population. His research shows that if you build your positive emotion, you deliberately build it, you try to improve the amount of positive emotion you have in your life, if you build and improve your engagement with life, if you pay attention to your relationships and make sure that you keep building those and improving those, If you wonder about what gives your life meaning and you suddenly become concerned and interested in that question, and if you also spend some effort on trying to accomplish things from knitting a beautiful jumper to doing a great day's work to playing very good golf, you will build your PERMA. You will improve your well-being. You can do that. It's within your power to do that for yourself. Now, we're also interested in resilience, and the science of resilience is not quite the same as the science of well-being. We think you need resilience because, look, we're human beings, and in the life of the ordinary human being, there is illness, there is loss, there is sadness, there's exclusion, there's trouble, and then there's death. And we share that. That happens to every one of us. There's no possible escape from it. So it's normal, actually, that we can expect challenges and troubles and that we need to be prepared to be able to deal with them. So resilience, we think, is really important. But we also think that physical activity, nutrition, and sleep is very important because, after all, the brain sits within the body, and there's plenty of research which talks about how important physical health is if you want good mental health. So PERMA Plus is our measure, and we've started measuring South Australians. We've measured about 35,000 of them so far with our collaborators. We've also begun looking at and introducing a train-the-trainer model because we want to be able to push out information about well-being and the science of well-being and resilience into the community. So we're taking a distributed network approach. We're taking a vector approach. We're looking for groups in community and in organisations and workplaces all over the state, and we're energising that information from the science of positive psychology and well-being and research into the society that way. And so far, we are communicating with and delivering wellbeing skills into the whole of the prison system, nearly the whole of the education system in South Australia. We're working closely with the whole of the TAFE system. That's the significant major group in vocational education. We're working with many ageing organisations, and we're working in many different workforces. So you can see we are taking that vector approach. And in each case, we're not interested in delivering programs that we've forgotten. We're interested in culture change. We're interested in turning all of our architectures in the direction of mental health by introducing more and more people to the knowledge and the science that can build mental health. So we're taking an approach that's a little bit like slip, slop, slap. Slip, slop, slap. And that campaign about skin cancer and avoiding it carried the science of how to do that into the whole population, and it's entered the culture of Australia. That's what we want to achieve with mental health and introducing that knowledge. So as I said, we have measured 35,000 people. We've trained over 1,000 people in the skills of positive psychology and wellbeing and resilience science. And we have reached over 38,000 people in seminars, trainings or lectures. So we're serious about scale. We're absolutely serious about scale. I'd like to introduce you to a couple of young people who've been receiving information about positive education at their school.
I find that I treat my friends a lot better and I pay it forward a lot. I use the power of yes. I have a lot of PERMA. I use mindfulness and I harness my character strengths.
And normally I would just freak out and do something else before positive education came along, and now I'm learning to just calm my anger and not take it out on my sisters when I get home.
I think the program is brilliant. I really think it is brilliant. It's a brilliant program. I think it should be in every school, I think they should bring it into workplaces as well. It's brilliant. It's helped my kids. It's helped me. I relate better to my kids now, and we have a better relationship now than what we used to. So no, I think it's a brilliant program, and I'm really glad that I did it. I'm really glad that I went with my son and did it.
And now Martin. Martin's a manufacturer. He's in the car industry. The car industry is leaving Australia, and we've been introducing resilience training into his particular organisation. This is what he says about the psychological skills that he'd never heard of before. He'd never come across this information before.
For me, the most important thing is it is something you can learn. It's not, you don't have to be born a certain way. You can actually, learn those skills. Doesn't matter where you're educated, what your education level is. So at any level you can learn those skills, and they will, help you in life.
So these skills and this information are simply tools to give you the opportunity to have a think about that structure of self, the universe of you that sits over your head. Are you happy with your life? Are you satisfied with where you're going? Do you like the direction of it? If you want to make some modifications, it's really good to understand that you're the builder of that architecture and you can have tools and capabilities to make changes in that if you choose to. Now, you may want to do that for yourself, but this is important, not just for you. This is not just about the you or the me. This is about families who need more resilience and more strength and better relationships. It's also about communities who need to bond together, who need to work together to be safe and content in their environment. It's about workforces who need to respond to digital disruption and the other pressures that are on the economic life of the society, and who need flexibility and a growth mindset. And finally, it's about political units, organisations, nations, cities, etc., where people need to know that their governments care about the well-being of everyone in that organisation or that country. So this conversation, this building mental health at scale, is not just about you, it's about everyone. It's about the whole society. And we've shown that it can be done, and it can be done anywhere by copying what we're doing here, and we'd like to see that happen. And when I look around the world and I feel myself to be part of the 21st century glorious chaos that's going on around us, it's about the only thing I can think of that might make a difference. And it may become part of the next scaffold to build the next evolutionary capability of we humans together. Thank you so much.